Iruni dahili lania awida iuga ipaliga holola o kei kuali o ili holonopu ho ala mena luik marie. Ka uia ka ua ke a ipalawai o pawili ka makani o haalele paakai de duhe o ke kanakapi ikulo o lana iale. Meha sa ulula inuita liau I ho pulu ia au. Ke alohano hukua wai te maulo
Lanai is the sixth largest island in the Hawaiian archipelago. With 141 square miles of land, today it is home to over 3,000 residents. The island's long and intricate history is a fascinating journey through time. As the 20th century dawned, a recently formed enterprise transformed this quiet community. Tallulah and Frederick Hazelden inherited the deeds and leases for most of the land on Lanai from Tallulah's colorful and controversial father, Walter Murray Gibson. They formed the Lanai Land and Development Company and in 1899 opened the Maunalei Sugar Company in partnership with Honolulu businessmen. More than 3,000 acres of land were cleared and nearly 600 acres of sugar planted. A pumping system for irrigation was built. Supplied by water from Maunalei Valley, it was able to deliver 9 million gallons of water a day.
Cane was planted at the place called Keomoku, just mauka of the village, and from the 25 foot above sea level to the about 500 foot above sea level area.
The raw cane was hauled from Keomoku by means of a narrow gauge rail.
This is a locomotive that was used in the Maunalei Sugar Company. It's a 24-inch narrow gauge rail that the locomotive itself was named the Waiahole while it was used on Maui previous to coming to Lanai in 1899.
The locomotive transported the cane to a port at Kahale, where it was shipped to Lahaina to be processed. Housing was built for imported laborers, mostly Japanese, but also some Chinese and Portuguese. Imported labor caused the population to jump from 174 in 1890 to 619 in 1900. But the venture failed in 1901 and the plantation closed. By 1903, control of the land on Lanai had passed from the Hazeldens to Charles Gay. He became the primary landowner with other businessmen holding some interests. Charles Gay was born in New Zealand but raised from an early age on the island of Kauai. His grandmother, Eleanor Sinclair, owned the island of Ni'ihau. Gay concentrated on ranching and tried to make improvements on the land. He started a fencing program and moved plantation houses built in Keomoku to the uplands for his workers. In an attempt to provide more water, he dug wells and created reservoirs. He also created a water pumping system from Maunalei Gulch to the uplands of Ko'ele. Most of Lanai was consolidated as privately owned land under Charles Gay. But the purchase of government lands along with those formerly leased, combined with a 3-year drought, brought financial strain and inevitable losses, and Gay was forced to sell. By 1910, most of Lanai was under the control of the Lanai Company Limited, with Charles Gay retaining a few parcels in Keomoku and Lalakoa. The population was 131, and nearly all residents were of native Hawaiian ancestry. The Lanai Company had the good sense to hire George C. Monroe as ranch manager in 1911. Monroe was from New Zealand and had formerly managed the Gay and Robinson Ranch on Kauai and the Molokai Ranch. George Monroe transitioned the stock from sheep to cattle, eradicated wild goats, and carefully managed the pasture lands. He was also a dedicated naturalist with a keen interest in plants and birds. His efforts to improve the water table were remarkable. At the ranch headquarters at Ko'ele, Monroe noticed water dripping from a magnificent Norfolk pine. The tree, planted in 1878, had been a gift from King Kalakaua to Walter Murray Gibson. Monroe realized that the tree, due to the structure of its needles, was able to produce water through fog condensation. Over the years, he enriched the island's water table by planting many similar trees, Cook Island pines, on Lanai.
The fog drip studies that took place on Lanai Hale in the 1950s and 60s, they concluded that as much as 200 gallons a day was extracted from that fog drift going over the mountain for every tree that was planted.
In 1917, the Lanai Company transferred its holdings to Frank and Harry Baldwin, two brothers born on the island of Maui. Their father was the co-founder of Alexander and Baldwin, one of the big 5 companies of Hawaii. The Baldwins retained George Monroe and supported the ranching operation. With their backing and Monroe's dedication, the ranch became profitable. Ranching on Lanai was dependent on the Paniolo, the skillful and hard-working Hawaiian cowboys. In 1918, in an effort to preserve what remained of one of the last dryland forests in the Hawaiian Islands, Monroe had the area known as Kanepu'u fenced off.
Kanepu'u is named for that hill that bore, the hill of Kane that was associated with the deity. In historic times, George Monroe, who came to Lanai in 1911, recognized the incredible value, the uniqueness of many of the forest components in this dryland system here on the northwestern edge of Lanai, or side of Lanai. Now, the forest was severely impacted by just wild grazing goats and sheep. In 1900, there were close to 100,000 feral animals on the island. Monroe arrives in 1911. He recognizes the value of this diverse forest and begins with the cowboys fencing in an area which is now the Kanepu'u Preserve.
In 1922, the Ulupalakua Ranch on Maui was put up for sale. Frank and Harry Baldwin wanted to purchase this property, but in order to do so, they had to sell Lanai. James Dole bought out the Baldwins' interest in Lanai for $1.1 million. Dole planned to develop the island into the largest pineapple plantation in the world. In less than a decade, the island was transformed. Kaumalapa'u Harbor was constructed as the island's primary seaport.
We're at Kaumalapa'u, which is situated within the Ahupua'a of Kamoku on the island of Lanai. In modern times, when James Dole purchased the island of Lanai in 1922, the big factor was they knew that they could get up to 20,000 acres of pineapple growing on Lanai, but how could they ship it? But they needed a harbor that they could create industrial access for. And so Kaumalapa'u in 1923 was selected. So this actually became the connection for Lanai and Oahu. Many of the people in the early 1920s and 30s that came to work on Lanai in the plantation landed here as well.
Lanai City grew around an open park space at the center of the town, with stores, a church, theater, and a business office. By 1926, 1,200 acres were planted in pineapple, and an additional 3,000 acres were being plowed for planting. In 1929, 7,000 acres of pineapple produced 50,000 tons of fresh fruit that were shipped to the cannery in Honolulu. Laborers of Japanese origin comprised the primary workforce in the early years, but by 1932, Filipino workers became the working majority. Plantation homes for workers surrounded Lanai City. By 1938, the population had swelled to 3,500, and 20,000 acres of land were under cultivation in pineapple. During these years, ranch operations continued but were of lesser importance, and pasture land was continually given over to pineapple cultivation. George Monroe retired, but continued as an advisor for the ranch and for ongoing forestry work. The bombing of Pearl Harbor and America's entry into World War II in 1941 brought changes to peaceful Lanai. Several Japanese residents were arrested and interned on the U.S. continent, and military personnel took up residency on the island.
But in this place, Kapukaloa, during World War II, the military used that part of the island for target practice. So they would drop bombs, live and dud bombs, and people still go out in the field today and you'll find some of the unexploded duds.
Union organizing was suspended during the war, but at the close of the war, the ILWU, the International Longshoremen and Warehouse Union, began serious organization of field workers. Labor unions were able to win many gains for workers, and in 1951, a 201-day strike by Lanai plantation workers won them better benefits and working conditions, the option to purchase their homes, and an industry-wide wage increase. 1951 also saw the closing of ranching operations on Lanai, and Dole began to look for new planting areas for pineapple outside of Hawaii due to rising costs of labor. An unfortunate legacy of the pineapple era is a result of the pervasive use of black polyethylene plastic in the fields as a method of retaining water and suppressing weed growth. The black plastic now presents a difficult ecological problem.
There are about 18 to 20,000 acres of land, all the plateau lands from Palawai Basin through this Kamoku region here, out. In fact, you can tell when you get to the edge of the pineapple fields, immediately the plastic in the ground stops and it becomes clear. So, 18 to 20,000 acres of plastic, and that's carried over again in the field visible since 1992 when the plantation closed.
Castle & Cook bought out the Dole Corporation in 1961 and became the new owners of Lanai. And by 1973, Castle & Cook began to plan the transition of Lanai from pineapple plantation to resort destination. David Murdoch bought Castle & Cook in 1985. Under his ownership, the lodge at Ko'ele opened in 1990 and the Manele Bay Resort in 1991. A ceremony was held in Dole Park in 1992 to mark the final pineapple harvest and the end of the plantation era on Lanai. In 2007, the Lanai Culture and Heritage Center opened and is actively documenting, preserving, and teaching Lanai's unique history.
We live on the island of Lanai. And there's a story. Have you heard the story about
Today, most of Lanai Island is owned by entrepreneur Larry Ellison, who purchased the interests in 2012. With this change of leadership, a new outlook for the island is emerging through the managing company Pūlama Lāna. Pūlama Lāna is now dedicated to planning and creating a sustainable island community. Their vision is to engage the island residents in collectively shaping a future that will develop Lanai as a thriving model of sustainability. With a rich past and a present diversity of minds, hearts, cultures, ideas, and expertise, the spirit of Lanai will endure throughout its journey into the future.
Hilika lania hawida ehuka ipalika hololai ke kualihi o iliolo no puho alamena lui kamalie ka hu ia ka ohuha ke a ipalawai O pāwili ka makani, o haalele paakai rei kuihewa o ke kanaka piikula o lana I hale. Meha sa ulula au inui ka lihau, iho o pulu ia vai aka ahu. E aloha no ka uku, aua I ke a maulo.